Namaskar, welcome to yet another episode of Tarang. A famous German composer has said, to send light into the darkness of men's heart is what the duty of an artist is. Today, we have with us one such young artist, Asavari Gurav. She is an artist, a performer, and a poet, and we are glad to have her here today amongst us. Asavari, which form of expression do you identify with the most? You call yourself a painter, a performer, a poet. Which medium do you identify yourself with the most?
Well, um, that's something which even I'm trying to understand because I start writing something, sometimes they are poems, sometimes they are not. Then an image stays, and then I'm a painter. And if it stays for too long, then it becomes more of a performance. So I think the expression is the same, the essence is the same, but something which I'm guilty about, or something which I love quite a lot, is painting, because there's no one who's going to do anything. But after I'm painting, there is a world which I want to just animate. So it's, I know I'm talking a little in a abstraction mode, but when I want to animate that world, it comes out with paint, with performances. So performances kind of, they just take everything together, and they give you like a nice gift to open up and just experience that.
True. So you mentioned that you're equally comfortable with expressing in all these mediums. How did you go about? Did you have any formal education in any of these fields? If yes, would you like to elaborate upon it?
Yeah, so I did my bachelor's in visual arts in painting from Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Gujarat, and I did my master's in printmaking from the same university. So I spent quite a lot of time, I think 6 years in the Gujarat University, and I learned quite a lot about visual art. But I would like to add that the curriculum didn't just have visual arts, or we had to strictly paint. We also had a film club, so we watched a lot of films. It was called FAFC, and so I got introduced to world cinema there. And then we had theater clubs. In fact, I'm one of the founders of a poetry literature group called Shabad in my college. So yeah, I think we had a very interdisciplinary kind of thing. Like we saw how text and image can probably go together, how theater can be also part of it. So it was quite a interesting climate like that, and people from everywhere would come. So I did do my education in painting, but we were always in touch with theater. We were always in touch with films.
So that seed to explore various mediums was probably,
Yeah.
you got inspiration from your college.
Yeah, definitely. Quite a lot. And I think people who study fine arts, they have the ability to go to different kinds of fields like animation. Film is a visual medium. And right now, these days, everything is a visual medium. What we are doing is also a visual medium.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think we had possibilities to go anywhere. I also think whatever the education, I think it allows you to open up your mind. It's not just like textbook and answering your exams. It was much uh, open like that.
But from eligibility point of view, what does one need to have if they want to become, join the Bachelor's of Visual Arts course?
Okay. Well, then you need a portfolio of artworks. You need to know basics how to handle the medium, like drawing, painting, still lifes, basic things you need to know for sure. But you also need to know the art history. So what are the artists which are practicing the history of expressionism, impressionism, different kinds of things which happened. So you need to know that. And it's a little bit of theory, but it's I think very interesting if you look at it like that, whatever has happened. And yeah, you need to do it within 1 hour so that you can you can get in. Yeah.
All right. Asavari and her team's performance theatre piece that is called Existential Craxes is quite the talk of the town these days. They have had around 5 shows, and I think one of the performances also happened at the Goa Art and Literature Festival. What is Existential Craxes all about, Asavari? And it's referred to as a performance piece. It's not referred to as, you know, mainstream theatre. So at the same time, would you like to differentiate between what a performance piece is, and you know, why is it different from mainstream theatre?
I'm not so sure if it's very different from mainstream theatre, but actually the whole idea of egg in the play, which is a central metaphor, um, it would occur quite a lot in my paintings. But apart from that, it was also something which I was thinking about, and myself, Sneha, and Oish, we three were there. And Oish is actually was a curator at Flying Goat Cafe, and they invited me to do something like a performance. So initially my thought was completely different. I was supposed to do like a menu. So you choose something and you say egg, say like, I don't know, pulao, say pickle, and a different story would come out. So it was more of a performance art work.
Like an improv kind of.
Yeah, and performance art is like there's no script as such. It's right now in the moment. So this, what we are doing perhaps is a performance art work. You know, it could be like that. But then we thought, let's write something. And I think then I started writing the script. And when you're in a writing journey, the writing takes its own course. The writing took its own course. And yeah, I started writing Existential Craxes like a theatre piece, where the idea of recipes, the idea of eggs, the idea of love, romance, and this queer identity of this person, I think it all kind of comes across. And whatever we learned, like I think in our art education, people do learn philosophy, people do Indian philosophy, then existentialism, and then also theatre of the absurd comes there. So all these dramatics and let's say Bertolt Brecht and Artaud, all those references we were reading about. So those philosophies were there in my mind somewhere. And also this myth of Sisyphus. So that whole idea of humans' journey that is searching for meaning in the meaninglessness of life. So yeah, I think that's what I was trying to do with this play. I know it sounds very philosophical right now, but if you actually see the play, it's not. It's simple.
There are several terms that you used, which you know, some people who are not students of art or literature may not know. Just to create awareness about that, can you explain, you know, what you think existentialism is, and a little bit about the myth of Sisyphus and how it plays a role in your performance?
Yeah, so myth of Sisyphus, this myth where you know, he's picking a humongous stone and carrying it towards the mountain, the stone falls and then goes back again. And life is such, we just keep carrying on in our journey without knowing where we are going, what we are doing, but somehow we are ending up in a cycle, a loophole of things, and trying to search for meaning in a meaningless, chaotic world. I think right now it's more apparent with things going on around the world, with the whole, you know, chaos of war or this or that happening. I think we are searching for meaning there. and somehow we are also trying to exist. So I mean, the play does not pronounce all of these things. It's just a, some may say that it's just a romantic story, but
But these are the subtle
but these are the
undertones.
subtle undertones. That's why it's Craxus. And yeah, I think actually it kind of came very fluidly together, that the whole philosophy. I did not intend to. I went with the story. The philosophy just came along with it.
Nice.
So yeah, mostly it was just like right now, say a Gen Z's life is how, like, you know, it's chaotic sometimes, with so much of information at our hand, with so much of data. You need a app for finding a friend, you need an app for finding a soulmate, so many apps, but we are still lonely. So why? And I think that is something which I thought was interesting to tackle. So there are dating apps, there are the drama which unfolds in the dating apps, and yeah, there is this idea of polyamory which also comes through in the play. And yeah, I think Oesh has been very wonderful while editing, while telling me that, oh, this is not working or this is working, or try to make it into a, you know, so actually for me it is a theater piece, but eventually what happens is it blurs the boundary between performance art and theater,
And theatre.
because it's, I'm actually cooking something eventually, or I don't want to give any spoilers.
So performance art is more like it gives you the liberty to be to bring in improvisation than theatre. Theatre, you would agree, is a little bit more scripted than
Yeah.
performance art is.
Yeah.
That's what you would say is like the essential difference
Quite,
between the two.
yeah, quite a lot. And I think so my performance art works throughout have been so I've done poetry performances where I take my poems and I enact them as theater pieces, or I read a manifesto. So I think even in that improvisational space, I also try to see whether the script can also add something to it. So actually I'm breaking the this binary of this is performance art and this is theater. For me it's just art. Okay, and that has been my approach for my writing, for my painting, for everything. The whole process of creating it, the main intention is to say something. Say something about the art world, say something about the people around me, or images, or the masks we keep wearing. You know, this kind of we present ourselves as something, but actually inside we are completely different people.
Correct.
So it's actually more to do with that. So whatever medium gives me that power, I use that. So sometimes so I did the poetry performance called Manifesto for Artists, where I read a manifesto and then perform. And most of them have some context of some literary context, like T.S. Eliot or someone like Dostoevsky and all these things which I was reading actually. But there was one production, it's called Response to Red. So that was a collaboration with Mamta Velekar, and her poems and my poems, and they were stitched together. So I collaborated with Ramita Gurau, Dr. Ramita Gurau, and she directed it. So yeah, I think that was also a beautiful piece where response to the color red. So there are different expressions of the color red.
Nice.
So there can be love, there can be war, there can be yeah, many things like memories, this, that. So all those things kind of come together. And where are we? What is the human condition with just the color red? So that was something which was very nice, and I think that was a theater production. I think this also is a theater piece, and then I think it's up to the audience to decide what they actually want it to become.
Nice. So I think Asawari's works are a beautiful example of how we need to get rid of these binaries, as she said, and we need to look into the fluidity, the interdisciplinariness of art as well, you know. Asabri, on that note, do you have any uh, prominent or strong themes that commonly stand across all your works, your paintings, your performance pieces? I think
Hmm.
actually before I ask you that, I would like to, address this theme of, you mentioned that there is polyamory in your play
Hmm.
Existential Crisis.
Right.
Uh, do you think there are other, I'm sure there are, but what is your opinion on the kind of artwork that is being produced with respect to queer themes in Goa right now?
Hmm. I mean, I think artworks on queer themes have been produced for a long time. Maybe not very apparent on the individual, on like social media or anything, but artists have been producing. I personally believe that I look at artwork as artwork, and whatever their themes are, whatever they want to express, whether it's about queerness, whether it's about womanhood, whether it's about everything they want to say, it comes out. I don't really see that demarcation, but yeah, there is this artist called I think his name is Gonsalves Torres. I hope I'm not wrong, but is an installation artist. Uh, I love their works. In Goa, there are many artists, so to say. There's Avril, who's also doing something very interesting. I think she's part DJ, she's part artist and performance works and all. So I think all of us should like make more right now. Like more artworks are necessary. Celebrating queer joy, celebrating um, identities is a very beautiful thing. But I think right now one must focus on creating strong art, works of art, strong works of art, which will eventually give voice, not just voice, but also question the patriarchal mindset of people. Because I have noticed quite a lot that, themes which talk about queer love, themes which talk about a different story, like even if it's a love story, for example, let's talk about my play, Existential Crisis. Talking about existential crisis, talking about queer love, kind of puts some people off. Like I think it makes them uncomfortable because it doesn't talk about a straight Bollywood filmy love, which is 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. So it's not just that; it's more, and there are so many different shades. So I think queer people also need to embrace that and stop being defined by anyone, even themselves. So yeah, that's what I feel. I'm hoping, and I see that people have this set agenda and set idea to do things. So they need to break that and go for the sake of art, like just produce. Because right now is the time. Right now is the moment to express yourself.
Art for the sake of art, as it's said.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I really believe that you can't separate art from life.
true.
Yes, art is personal, and personal can be very political, but you just cannot separate your life from the art world. So for me it's little difficult sometimes, because whatever I see, if I go outside, I see some nice shadow, or if I see colors and I'm like, oh, this is amazing, I'm going to click a picture, I'm going to paint this. So that's how you are, it's in your practice, so you just
So a
can't.
lot of your artwork is also a reflection of the things that you see around you.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is a reflection of the things which I see around me, and there's a twist of magical. It's like there is reality, and then there is your dreams. So the world in my dreams, it's similar to the reality, but it's a little fun, and it has its own imaginary space, that subconscious space, and I think I like to tap into that world. So be it my poems, be it my, and I'm very interested in science fiction. Absolutely interested in science fiction, to talk
Nice.
about say apocalypse, say what happens tomorrow, and kind of relate that to right now, this moment. So yeah.
That's nice. So, coming back to exploring a little bit of your journey as an artist on canvas. I had the privilege of going through some of your artwork, and I noticed a common theme of folklore and mythology in some of your paintings. And recently, a book has been published by Vitai Zaraukar, which is called Story of Janki Bai.
Yes.
And you're the illustrator of that book as well. So that is also a book that is at the heart of Goa's folk culture. Can you elaborate a little about how folk culture plays an important part in your artwork?
So the story goes back to 2021. I think it's after the first wave, when I was still doing my masters, and I got this grant, the Goa Open Arts Catalyst grant, and I had no expectations of getting it, but I guess the work was about Goa's folk tales, and I wanted to make paintings in response to those folk tales, to those folk stories. So I spoke to Dr. Jayanti Naik, and I was going through the stories which she had collected, and Jayanti Naik's stories, I think they gave me quite a lot of inspiration to paint. So it was a research for me. It was also kind of referential to those stories, whatever those paintings were, and stories which are connecting nature. Then they are connecting nature to women. So I found it very interesting how our own stories are around us. Like in nature, they are like connected to flowers and connected to trees. So like Aparajita, right? And that story of the sun, and or I would also connect it to say the Greek myth of Icarus.
Yes.
Right. So that, and also the idea of Cinderella, but we have Kunaya Kuskut. So Kunaya Kuskut story was very interesting for me. So I think I was into again, it was painting and it was part illustrative, but it was not illustrating everything. So it was that mid space, and I think painters have a connection to telling story, like since ages. I'm not like the this has been done before. So I thought, why not explore our stories, like go in folk tales, because they talk so much, and it's so absurd also. There's so much magic, there's so much so many things which are comical, horrific. So I thought, why not? And the book illustration, I'm an artist, I'm not an illustrator per se. So it was my first attempt to respond to the stories. And the story is lovely. Janki Bai story is amazing. And actually, Professor Kyoko from Konan University in Japan, it was a collaboration between the university and Goa University. And through that, I was commissioned to work on it. And it was quite a tedious 6 months or more working on that. And I think, I'm quite happy the way it is. Also, and you can also listen to the story as well. So,
Yeah, beautiful illustrations.
Thank you so much. Actually, it is an attempt. So, there's this Walter Benjamin's writing on the age of mechanical reproduction. And the question of, can paintings be there? So right now, in the age of AI and what I don't know what all is coming, ChatGPT, this, that. So I wanted to paint, and I wanted my hand painted works to. I have no. I'm not complaining about digital works. I think they are amazing, and I also do them. But I wanted the folk tales and the stories, which are. It has a lot of heart into it. So I wanted it to be hand painted. And that's why the paintings made its way to the book and to the people. I'm happy.
That can perhaps be a topic for another episode.
Sure.
The essence, whether it's there or missing in the digital artworks or no. I think we should not end before we listen to Asavari perform a small piece or maybe just a few lines.
Okay. This poem is called The Last Gas Cylinder. On a Saturday evening, she stares at the world's last gas cylinder. They all look at her. No one believed her. She would have been executed if the authorities knew of such wild actions. She would have been sent to prison, for it is no longer allowed to store or sell groceries, and cooking itself is treason. She has a nostalgic flashback to her mother's special palak paneer. As she begins to fry her chapati, the aroma fills the sky with life, sending a rush through citizens worldwide. Suddenly, memories arrive, ones they had forgotten as children, until the last gas cylinder was confiscated and kept inside a glass box in a museum.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
I hope we don't have to look at a gas cylinder in a museum. It was a pleasure talking to you, Asavari.
Likewise.
Would you like to end by giving us, some sort of, I wouldn't say message, but how do you perceive art should be preserved or taken forward in this age of AI invasion?
I think art will survive. I mean, I don't have to say that. It has been surviving since the cave paintings. So I don't think it will ever stop. Till there is human emotion left in us, I think we will keep creating. I think we need more sensitive people during such a time when, so many things are happening around the world right now, wars and gas or whatever. But yeah, right now, more than ever, we need artists, we need writers, we need poets, we need creators to keep creating and believe that there is power in whatever they do. Maybe right now there is this sort of loneliness epidemic that they feel, but there is art lover waiting to, receive, and probably not at the moment, but later the work will talk about the time we are in. So yeah, and like Brecht says, in dark times, will there be any singing? Yes, there will be singing also in the dark times.
Nice. So I think we can end on the note that art will survive no matter what. Thank you for watching this episode and keep watching Tarang.
The voice for Koi.